Hi, everyone. Welcome to Group 1's Capstone Project. Our topic was over literacy. The members in this group are Catherine Gegelman, Letitia Flores, and Armand Houston. Catherine Gegelman is a student finishing up her degree to begin their life as an elementary teacher. She has also just applied for graduate school and hopes to be accepted in the spring. Letitia Flores is a student finishing up her degree to become a bilingual elementary teacher or counselor. Armand Houston is a student, but he is also a professional tutor of mathematics and mathematic application. What we're going to be going over in this presentation is that illiteracy is not something that is new to our world. In fact, it has been something that has increasingly got worse. Many times, kids are being pushed through the system whether they are literate enough to move on to the next grade or not. This can affect each individual differently. However, many times it is something that is actually going to end up affecting their mental health. I'm going to expand a little bit on what I just talked about. After carefully analyzing the issue, we have discovered that not only are many students being passed from grade to grade, but they can even get as far as their senior year, unrestricted, only for the schools to tell them that they are not competent enough or do not have enough credits to graduate. Many of these students are behind in their English, math, and many other subjects because of this lack of focus on their literacy. The issue at hand is one that starts in elementary school and only worsens as the student moves forward in school because of the lack of those willing to address this issue. The subject we decided to put most of our focus on was math. With math illiteracy, we have seen how it can lead children to begin to struggle with their mental health as they feel less than or not as smart as their peers. So each group member had a goal or a topic that they wanted to research. Catherine researched the physiological effects that a student of any age can face when being illiterate. Letitia researched how we can prevent the action of moving students through the system who are not ready or able to be moved on to the next level or grade. Armand researched the mathematics deficiency, the effective remedy through the tools of assessment. Catherine's research was all about mental health. Mental health is something that is so important to not only the well-being, but also their success. There are a multitude of things that will affect a person's mental health, whether it is an acute problem or something that is slowly brought on and considered more long-term. Among all of these different factors that can affect someone's mental health, illiteracy is one that affects more people than you would think. Illiteracy is not something that is brand new to our world. In fact, illiteracy has been around since before we even had schools. Unfortunately, even with the increase of school availability and attendance, illiteracy is something that is still very prevalent in our communities. According to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, which was published in 2021, only 35% of students were at or above average in their proficiency, and 34% of students are below this proficiency level. Oftentimes, those who are below the proficiency level are still passed through the system from grade to grade. This is shown in the studies done on adults. According to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, also known as the UNESCO, although the rate of illiteracy has been steadily decreasing in the past decades, there are still 773 million illiterate adults worldwide. We are no longer just facing issues in the school, but are now needing to worry about those who have been passed through the system and even into adulthood with little to no proficiency in math, reading, or science. Oftentimes, this can be cause for why individuals cannot get jobs that would allow them a sustainable lifestyle and are often left to pick up menial jobs working in gas stations and doing manual labor. Watching those around you, whether they are the same age or younger, can cause frustration and a negative outlook on your own capabilities. This can cause for a multitude of issues, one of those being a decrease in their mental health. When you are forced to sit around watching those around you be good at something that you should be able to participate in, there are often times that you have negative feelings towards yourself or others when you cannot keep up with them. You are often left attempting to hide the truth about what you can and cannot do, leading to stress, pushing those away that are on your side, and often pushing away opportunities to receive help in fear of what they might say or think about you. Being illiterate can cause you to feel lonely, anxious, and often useless. There was even a study done on adults who are illiterate to see how these individuals felt mentally and emotionally. The individuals in this study showed that being illiterate increased their anxiety by 11.3%, increased their loneliness by 17.9%, increased useless feelings by 10.9%, and decreased their happiness by 1.34%. With these numbers being so high in adults who have been failed by our education system, I can only imagine how those who are still in school must feel. Those who are still in school are still struggling every day with grades, keeping up with those around them, and occasionally faking their abilities and having constant anxiety of being called out by the teacher to announce the answer or demonstrate their work in front of the class. This issue with our schools pushing people through the system and in turn affecting their mental health can stem from a huge issue that many school systems face, which is usually funding. Another issue our school faces is how easy it is to become a teacher or be asked to teach a subject that you may know nothing about. Our school system is filled with teachers who are not qualified to teach their respective subjects or who do not care anything about the education of our youth, but only teach because it is a job.
According to the National Center for Education Statistics, in 2019, there were 2 million dropouts between the ages of 16 and 24. Even before the school closures due to the COVID pandemic, the problem of children being illiterate or not up to par with his or her school grade has been a problem. Now, after the COVID closures, the children with poor education, it has become a bigger and wider problem for our school system. Schools are busy trying to find the solution on how to help that child that has been failing and how to help those that are close to failing. How can we help these children overcome childhood illiteracy? Ways to stop the illiterate cycle is to start teaching from the moment a child can start to understand. We can start making changes to a classroom setting or simply encourage a child to continue in his or her studies that can decrease the illiteracy problem. Recognize. The first step to help a child succeed in school is to recognize when the child is having trouble. Several studies have confirmed that children are not all the same, so they tend to learn differently. There are different ways that our brain works, and that not all people learn the same. Some people are hand-on learners. Some people must get their hands onto the project to understand what the project is about. Other people are visual learners. That is the visual approach. In many studies, the results show that there are many people that learn through the hands-on training. But the more important point, I believe, is the idea that actions which we develop for our audience engage the mind as well as the hand. According to Dewey, not all experiences are educative, as Dewey pointed out in the Experience in Education. This does not mean that they necessarily must be complex, but that they need to allow the participants to think as they act. Hine, 1991, page 18. There are also visual learners. These are the kind of learners that can gather the instruction and fix a model by reading. These are also the learners that can see the project and can remember exactly how the project will be constructed. Visual learners think in pictures and learn best in visual images. They depend on the instructors or facilitators' nonverbal cues, such as body language, to help with understanding. Some visual learners favor sitting in front of the classroom. This is according to Didi Studies 2012. A combination of learning styles is probably the most beneficial in a classroom because no child is the same. Various researchers have attempted to provide ways in which learning styles can take effect in the classroom. Two such scholars are Dr. Rita Dunn and Dr. Kenneth Dunn. Dunn and Dunn wrote that learners are affected by their one, immediate environment, own emotion, sociological needs, that self, peers, team, adult are varied, their physical needs, that's perceptual strengths, intake, time, and mobility. That is what they researched, Dunn and Dunn. They claim that not only can students identify their preferred learning styles, but that students also score higher on tests, have better attitudes, and are more efficient if they are taught in ways to which they can more easily relate. Therefore, says Dides, it is to the educator's advantage to teach and test students in their preferred styles. The next step after recognizing that our child has problem, then we must utilize our resources that are there for us to use. The resources the school provides to help our children. They have an educational therapist that can help get your child tested for any learning disability. Some concerns that the therapist can check for are learning disabilities that the child might be experiencing. For example, one of those disabilities is dyslexia. Learning dyslexia is more common than one would think. Worldwide statistics emphasize that 1 in 10 people have dyslexia. Another resource that the school has available is connecting with the school counselor. This is to make sure that a program is in place for your child and that they do not fall behind with his or her grades. According to the duties of a counselor, they are to work at making sure that all students thrive and succeed, to lower the achievement gap that has been plagued American for 20 years. The United States government did take action also and created a program known as the No Child Left Behind. That was created in 2001. This program has increased learning standards and forced all states to create yearly assessments for all schools to measure literacy growth. Schools that were not passing at an average level are forced into government-based programs. Because of the emphasis states are being placed on No Child Left Behind assessments, many districts are concentrating on reading and writing instruction. Writing journals have been studied as an effective way to providing students with writing instructions, and they can be implemented in virtually all subjects areas according to the GUIDE 1992 and Perotti 1994 studies. Your school counselor contacts the parents about the child not passing the grade. The school counselors lets officials get involved if the parents is not activated in helping their child. And another school counselor activity or what they do is plan for the child and the school to make sure that this child does not fail or drop out of school. That is one of the duty of the counselor. When we fail at teaching our children, this is school and parent. According to the Intercultural Development Research Association, Texas public schools are losing 1 out of 5 students. This report was announced June 28 of 2021. According to that same report, Texas schools have lost a total of more than 4 million students in the last 34 years. We must take action. How do we take action? In order to stop the illiteracy, according to the research made by IDRA, in order to stop the illiteracy, we must infiltrate our communities, and we must, as parents, take action. We must keep our stakeholders accountable for student success. We need to build a community of partnership that is involved to keep an eye out for those children that may have fallen or are fixing to fall through the cracks. My name is Armand Houston, and I am a professional tutor of mathematics and mathematics application. I have fervently devoted the last 12 years of my life to help others discover the innate beauty inherent to this subject. The research presented is heavily inclined to grant favor to mathematics assessment, but this has not been done without meticulous consideration for the tangential components dictating the boundaries of constraint. 4. Logic demands that the corollary measure transmitted and received is limited to the scope of accuracy and precision of the tools that impart this measure. Furthermore, focus has been channeled through a cogitative lens, magnifying regard for the branches of mathematics that tilt to favor ubiquity. Since it is not reasonable to encapsulate the nature of the subject in a manner that is all-inclusive, discourse has been narrowed and joined to a scope that functions within bounds that more so accord with the notion of elasticity. Further, just to be clear, attention has been allocated to discuss the subsidiary topics of college algebra, trigonometry, and courses traditionally bundled to form the general calculus sequence. Each of the assessments created has been designed to stringently sprinkle pertinent aspects of pedagogy that accord well with mandated curricula, where the prescribed course of study directly intersects that set forth by the Texas State University catalog. The college algebra assessment has been carefully crafted so that content analysis, reflected through the extrapolation of results, accurately detects coherence to regard the rudimentary components outlined in the catalog. The topics included in this course are linear equations, quadratic equations, inequalities, elementary functions, logarithms, word problems, and systems of equations. The ability to successfully regard these topics is highly contingent upon a concrete understanding of the rules that preside over the basics of algebraic process. For this reason, the assessment has been designed to gauge levels of comprehension that are directly associated with these basic skills. In parallel fashion, the evaluative content engendered to ascertain readiness for trigonometric study has also been developed to accord with the skills deemed necessary as determined by Texas State University. The topics accorded to focus are trigonometric functions, right triangles, radian measure, graphs of trigonometric functions, trigonometric identities, inverse trigonometric functions, trigonometric equations, oblique triangles, and complex numbers. In the presence of juxtaposition, the defining requisites of competence reside recursively with the prominent parts of algebraic process, apropos of that mentioned antecedently. At this level of study, one should possess concrete understanding of the ambulatory parts that merge together to manufacture concepts directly correlated with the idea of general mathematical functions. One should also be well equipped with the astuteness to regard generic relationships between mathematical operators and their counterparts. The content devised to examine readiness for study has been designed to directly assess competency in this area. This has been accomplished through the creation of content that asks one to verify or identify items that define mathematical functions compared to those that do not. The assessment materialized to evaluate one's readiness for the calculus sequence has also been devised with deference to the Texas State University catalog. During one's course of study, content is heavily reconciled to a battery of concepts that persist with the idea of differential operators and their integral counterparts. The primary catalyst that is most prominent during the course of initial study is the notion of a variable quantity changing with respect to another. The tangible aspect that imparts substance to this idea rests with a paramount definition that is commonly referred to as a difference quotient. Put quite plainly, the difference quotient is an arbitrary expression that amplifies the variability in the average rate of change betwixt two discretionary points. The variability imparted to such expression is a corollary directly related to the general variability imparted to general mathematical functions. The nature of the ideas presented hitherto are an integral part of the assessments devised. This is because one must demonstrate exercise to regard a fair portion of the skills acquired for. It is also imperative for one to have a clear grasp of function behavior, not necessarily limited to logarithmic, exponential, trigonometric, rational, and polynomial functions, as well as the like. For this reason, the exercises manufactured to gauge competence tend to bend a direction that is slightly more holistic, while demanding a degree of mastery to employ algebraic process elevated when adjacently compared to the assessments previously explored.
In the next following slides, we're going to see Armand's tools of assessment. These tools are how they assess. It's a test to gauge their readiness. Once everyone was done with their individual research, we came together as a group and analyzed the final results and gained this new insight. Our mental health is widely affected by a multitude of things. However, illiteracy can play a larger part than many, including myself, realized. Those who struggled with illiteracy are prone to a multitude of effects, including those of which are pertinent to our mental health. While many would like to think that illiteracy is something that is not our teacher's fault, this is unfortunately not the case. In many articles found, it is shown that illiteracy rates and the illiteracy rates caused from COVID are not the same, and the illiteracy rates caused from COVID can actually be lower. While illiteracy is often seen as something that only affects one's reading and writing ability, this is actually not the case. Mathematics can play a huge part in the English language. There's a specific evaluative process that measures one's aptitude for the linguistic aspects that will web together the components of mathematical syntax to the grammatical structure that is inherent to the English language. After analyzing the options, we agreed as a group that our following options were. After talking with our group about how each individual research would fit, we decided that creating a plan that educates others on this issue using previous studies and statistics allows for a more successful future for our students. In truth, there may be some educators that do not know the truth behind illiteracy, how those are failing can become affected without proper assistance, and how there are multiple different factors that go into someone's learning over the English language. Instead of blaming, we found that educating those of this issue will lead to a greater impact that we are wanting to see. If we want teachers to understand and be able to work with these students instead of just passing them on, we first have to start by educating the teachers themselves. Choosing this as a topic was actually quite easy for each of us. We all immediately had a direction we were willing to take for literacy, and were even surprised at how easy it was to then come up with a combined plan using each of our previous research. We chose to take this route of educating others because we all realized how little we actually knew about the world of illiteracy, and came to the conclusion that this was probably true for many others. Illiteracy is unfortunately not something that is going away anytime soon. So we must learn how to work with this issue to prevent future students from following this path and help those who have already been shown this unfair and daunting path. Once we were finished with our evaluating phase, we determined that our course of action. Team 1 created a literacy plan to help educators to become better understanding of what all goes into literacy and how common these issues are in schools. We have put together a plan that will educate those on the rising illiteracy rates, how there are multiple subjects that can influence this issue, and how the unfortunate mental side effects that can occur if we do not address these issues fully. Too many times now, we have seen individuals pass through the system whether or not they are truly ready academically. Our literacy action plan. Our literacy action plan is aimed at teachers who educate our future generations, administrators who set up the different programs, and any of those who may be curious about this subject. While our plan is written so that anyone can read it, it is specifically directed at our educators and education system because we hope to affect change within this education system to reduce these rates and to keep them from going up. Our plan allows those this chance to read about the different aspects and effects that reading and math illiteracy can have on an individual. As a group, we decided to keep the main focus of our plan on how important mathematics is to our English language. Math and English literacy go quite well together and in quite a pertinent way. And while this is our main focus, our plan will also touch on the increasing rates that we are seeing within illiteracy and how it can even have an emotional effect on these individuals. There have been lots of research and testing done to show the importance of math in our English programs and include this in the plan as documents used to test this competency. Our plan follows the following sequence: introduction, assessments, assessment, analysis, problem identification, perspective action, adjustments, establishing support, and emotional effects. In the introduction, we give a brief overview of what this plan is going to really be going over, followed with some statistics about how common illiteracy is in the United States. The next section on assessments gives a strong statement on what assessments truly are and what benefits we can find from using these assessments. Also included on this page are a few different types of assessments that are there for us to use. Our assessment analysis page shows a sample of the assessments used to determine a student's proficiency. Included are discussions on what these assessments mean in terms of what we do if a student demonstrates struggles or issues. The next section covers problem identification, which is put in place to help us identify what problems each individual may be having. Being able to identify the problem can help us to know where we need to step in and start helping these individuals solve any issues that may arise in the past or in the future. The perspective action is all about focusing on putting those who we are serving at the center of the problem. Setting those who are struggling at the center and working around them allows us to not only approach the problem, but also build up their confidence in these areas. The section we put in for adjustments is there because we know that no plan or person is perfect, and in turn, there may need to be adjustments made to their plan set in place for these individuals. This is put in place to ensure their success in whatever areas they may be struggling in. For the emotional effects that can be a common side effect of illiteracy, we included it to not only show the issues themselves, but the issues that can accompany something that is so common. Our school system are much better prepared now. At the start of this project, we learned very quickly how little each of us truly knew compared to what we thought we may know. This plan began to slowly fall into place the longer we began to research and learn for ourselves what is truly going on, how common it is, and what we needed to do to help fix or adjust this problem. The effects it can have on someone's mental health is also something that we found incredibly important. Illiteracy is something that will not be going away anytime soon, as I have said throughout this presentation. But it is something that is up to us to adjust our system and approach the problem head on. This plan is written to help educate those who may be like us, assuming that they know what they need to know. Educating those who are in charge or advocating for this issue can help to further the change and improve our problem. Putting those who are behind at the center of our adjustments can help to not allow them to feel as though they need to suffer in silence. It is important that we all put our heads together to educate and adjust the necessary programs with this plan to lower the illiteracy rates and in turn lower the struggles mentally that many face when this problem is not fully addressed.